I am Madison Timmons.
I'm Chris Susi.
And we're paranormal specialists who live in the most haunted city on earth, Savannah, Georgia. Every day is Halloween in our line of work, so join us as we spin true tales of haunts, murders, and disturbing Savannah history. I'm Madison.
I'm Chris.
And welcome to the most haunted city on earth. Hey there, ghosts, ghouls, and everything in between. We at the Savannah Underground are extremely excited to say that we have officially launched our Patreon. The link is in our description, or you can search patreon.com/Savannah Underground. So head over to our page and join us for bonus content, merch drops, live investigations of haunted locations, and just getting to know us, because we really want to get to know you. Enjoy the episode and stay spooky, y'all. Hello, and welcome back to another episode of the most haunted city on earth. My name is Madison Timmons.
I'm Chris Susi.
And we have a super awesome guest with us today. This is Chloe Graveface.
Hello.
Yes, she and her husband actually own a Oddities Museum here in Savannah with one of the most expansive John Wayne Gacy collections, which is kind of crazy and cool. They're also located over on Factors Walk, so if you're not super familiar with Savannah, that's over down towards the river, but that is also an incredibly haunted place to be. So I'm going to let you introduce yourself, Chloe.
Yeah, so my name's Chloe, and I co-own the Graveface Museum. We've been open a little less than 3 years, but we cover topics ranging from cults, true crime, serial killers, mostly through death row art and personal effects. Then we also have a whole cabinet of haunted objects as well, a room for roadside attractions from the 50s, sideshow history, so kind of a barrage of things are in the museum. But
absolutely,
yeah, it's all just kind of underrepresented parts of history that just are kind of weird and interesting, though, innately.
It's super dope. If you ever are in Savannah, or if you live here in Savannah and you haven't been to the Graveface Museum, you need to go down there, because it is just the coolest collection of things. Very different than any other kind of dark tourism attraction, in my opinion, in the U.S. that I visited, at least. But so let's talk about some of the ghosty things that happen in your building. I know for one, at least something that I've heard about is the seance table.
Yeah.
You want to tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, so we, so the way that we also, just a quick backstory of how we kind of obtain objects.
Absolutely.
So we try to get things as close to the origin as possible. That way they come with some interesting backstory, history, and context. And that just kind of gives us more talking points. So it's not just like, here's an item. There you go.
Yeah.
It's more like a conversation and why this is important and why this is interesting. So the seance table came about through, it was this guy named Curtis who was involved in a lot of early 70s Satanism, and then was kind of the Detroit version of Anton LaVey. He held black masses in his basement, and innately also Satanism is not sacrificing people, that was really just the church's response to I don't like this. So they just kind of made up stuff, basically. And then that turned into a self-fulfilling prophecy, where it was people actually thought that was what Satanism was all these terrible things. And then it just spiraled from there. But anyways, so Curtis was he was the weirdo in town. So he was very much blamed for if a cat went missing, oh, it must be him. And then and it didn't really bother him until, his, this neighborhood that he was living in, a little girl went missing. And then the whole town was like, he did it. No evidence, nothing. But it was kind of the final straw. So he just got out of it, left, dropped off the grid. His brother was going through all of his stuff, found the seance table. And he wasn't super close with him to know what exactly they were doing, or what kind of magic he was working with. He definitely was involved in a lot of occult and ritual magic. So there was definitely some weight. There was this table that he actually made. It was 4 seances, but it looks like a big Ouija board, and so,
of course.
And there's candle wax on it. And so anyways, we grabbed it because it was really cool, and he was like, I don't know what to do with it. So yeah, we adopted that. And since we put it in the museum, we've had people that they ask if they can use it. They'll bring in like pendulums and stuff like that, because they say that they're getting some specific feeling from this stuff.
Sure.
And so anyway, so some people have had experiences and connected through that table. And then some people that just have no ghosty kind of paranormal experience, they'll be reading the description that's on the table and then be like poked on the back, or like they'll hear somebody whisper in their ear. And one girl actually got really freaked out because she was reading something on the table, the description that was there, and then looked away and talked to her friend. And then when she looked back, the thing moved, and she actually watched it like slide. And it's like, and she got really freaked out, and she insisted that we go back on the camera and check and see. And you could see her, like, you could actually see, she was blocking it, unfortunately, like just with the camera angle, so you can't actually see, of course, anything. Oh yeah, it's always how it goes.
Absolutely, that's exactly
It's
how
not
it
a blurry
goes.
picture, it's an obstructed picture.
Exactly.
Yes, absolutely.
So yeah, that was unfortunate, but you could see her freaking out, which was kind of amusing too. But no, we get stories like that every time, like from day one, pretty much when we
Sure.
opened.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I remember the first time JT and I went to visit the museum. I mean, the seance table is in the middle of their cult room, and it's like right next to like the Flavor Aid packets from Jonestown. So I'm like, there's a lot of energy going on in that room in general, from just like artifacts like the Jonestown stuff and like other things from cults, these groups that are putting a lot of energy into their items in general. But there's just something about the seance table that just gives you the creeps. It really does. And that's coming from somebody who does practice, witchcraft and magic and stuff. I'm just like, there's something about this table that just feels wrong. It feels off.
The 70s and 80s was like the Wild West of a cult. There was a lot of, because they took the strains of an idea, and in that core of the Church of Satan or the Satanic Church, the concepts that were very tight-knit. You come to the East Coast, people were not a part of that movement.
Right.
They were just hearing it, and they were pursuing it on their own.
Yep.
And it was amazing the number of publications that came out, the books you could get. You get your Buckland's book on witchcraft or the Modern Witch's Spell book or all these things. And people were constructing their own identity of faith around the ideas that were becoming pervasive. And so the Satanic Panic and this whole idea in the 80s of teenagers and young people really experimenting with things that they had no idea of what they were really doing. Definitely. Because it was in the news all the time. There was so much pressure from the media to identify this Satanism as a threat. And here in Georgia, it was interesting because there was this strain of drug traffickers who decided to use the occult as a front. So while everybody was like, oh, look at all this occult information, they were like smuggling drugs up I-95, knowing that the police are now actively looking for satanic cults. And I think this might have been a nationwide thing where enterprises were using the fear of Satanism, the kind of graffiti that they used, the kind of things that they left behind. People would get wigged out and be like, I don't want to do it. But that also led people to do dangerous rituals, to attempt, summonings and things like that in a type of ignorance that is only born in absolute fascination and corrupt business practices.
Right, because take away the internet from all of this stuff.
Absolutely.
It's like you are hearing just mutterings of people and just interpretations and assumptions, and a lot of it is based in there's like a shred of truth, and then it's like something completely different surrounding it. So that's how, and it's like playing telephone, and
yes, it is
for such specific
dangerous telephone.
Yes, exactly.
But it's funny because it's like even things in Savannah have always been blamed on Satanists and things like that. Like 20-something years ago when we had the issues with the animal sacrifices in the cemeteries, they're like, it's Satanists, they're the ones doing it. But it was more than likely just some type of ritual of some sort. But
it's interesting because in the late 70s, early 80s, on Factor's Walk, there was a voodoo shop. A place where you can purchase the goods for the religion, not for boogity boogities. But because of the tourism trade, they started like putting like devil paintings and things to scare them away, to be like, don't come here. Yeah. This is not for you. Yeah. This is not about what you want. And unfortunately, the dark tourism took a turn, and now people were going in and buying up what was usually used for ritualistic purposes as souvenirs. And so they actually closed shop rather than turning it into a capitalist venture. They were like, we do not want you to have a voodoo keychain. We don't want you to purchase these things with the sole purpose of souvenir. You know, these are the pieces of our faith. These are for use, not for fun.
For display objects.
For display.
Right. Go to Marie Laveau's instead. They're like,
right. Well, and that was the interesting thing between Savannah and New Orleans. You can see the difference of, they closed all the shops in Savannah. There were like 3, and they closed them down when the tourism got too big. But in New Orleans, they leaned into it, and they're like, oh, you know what? You want it? Yeah, we can sell that to you. We can get
they're
this
like,
to you.
here's a voodoo doll that's not actually a voodoo doll, but we'll tell you it's a voodoo doll.
Terrible misrepresentation of a faith, but here you go.
Right.
Yeah.
It's on our keychain.
Yeah,
absolutely.
And that happened too a lot. Like in the Low Country, I feel like it was a bigger, like a lot of people just went underground, and everything was word of mouth because everyone was persecuted.
Absolutely.
And I mean, there was definitely a very big distinct difference between New Orleans voodoo and like Low Country hoodoo, where that is like, you don't talk about it. I don't know. Have you ever read Drums and Shadows?
Oh, yes,
absolutely.
That is my book of books.
I love that book. I read through it like right before we opened the museum, because I remember
so amazing.
It's incredible, and that's how we actually. So a fun pertaining thing to the museum. I don't know if you remember, but the first room that you walk in, we have the walls cladded with all this burnt wood from an old hoodoo house that was actually owned by and lived in by Madame Truth.
Yes.
And nobody knows who she is unless you've read Drums and Shadows.
Yeah.
So Drums and Shadows is actually a free, you can get it for free because it was written as a part of the government works project during the Depression. They actually sent investigators, journalists to speak to, and these were like first generation, second generation slaves. Like, these were people who were either freed or the children of freed slaves, to tell their story of the Gullah and Geechee religion. And if you want to know about ghosts or the natural magics of the Low Country, Drums and Shadows is an amazing resource. It's where
really
you can
is.
really find some interesting and truly baffling stories.
Right. Yeah, as far as I know, that is the only thing I've been able to dig up on Low Country, hoodoo, Gullah Geechee.
Absolutely.
Especially more like magic-leaning stuff. Like, because, again, you just didn't talk about that here.
And it's all first-person account, too,
Yes.
which was amazing.
It's incredible.
And written in dialect,
Yes.
which is sometimes difficult to
Yeah, it took a minute to
it
like
takes a
get
while.
used to it, but yeah, you read it, and especially I read it like twice, but yeah, it's an awesome resource, and I recommend it to like everybody who wants to
Absolutely.
just kind of explore
Yeah,
Savannah
absolutely. Not just
history.
Savannah, but
Low Country.
ritualistic faith, roots of folklore. Because to them it was not folklore. To them it was their everyday life. And now today, when we tell ghost stories, or we tell these little remnants of the hag, or the root doctors and things like that, when you hear it from people who would literally point and say, that man put a hex on that man.
Yep.
And it was amazing how detailed the stories were. I love that book. It's a great book.
Yeah. And it definitely gives you a better understanding of the Gullah Geechee people too, because they're not just in Savannah. They extend all the way down from Florida up to as far as like North Carolina, maybe Virginia, but it's so deeply entrenched in Southern culture, and I feel like they don't get talked about enough. And we definitely try to promote that, especially in Savannah. I think we attempt to bring about some of their folklore, especially the hag and the plaid eye. We tell those stories in our show and whatnot. So yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
So on the topic of Satanism, so I feel like I remember Ryan telling us about a record that y'all found in the wall at the museum.
Yeah.
So can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yes. So actually, that is. So we have a few records in the like in the museum itself. But the record that we found in the wall is actually a 78 speed record. And it was actually labeled like with a handwritten note labeling it chanting, speaking in tongues, and sermon. So it was actually, we did end up listening to it. I don't know when you came in, it could have been before that maybe. But yeah, we listened to it, and sure enough, that is exactly what was on the record. It was chanting, speaking in tongues on the A side, and the B side was a sermon. So it is very bad quality because it was in a hole in a wall for like 60 years plus. So anyways, we did gather that it was actually recorded in Louisiana at some sort of church. I can't remember. It was some kind of, I can't remember the name. It was like the Hand of Christ or something like that. Just probably a really tiny little church. But it was a home recorded record, so it was recorded by the church there, live on scene. And so that is actually, we ended up finding as well some other little things hidden in the walls when we were doing the we didn't even do that many renovations or anything. We just had to like put up some walls and like make sure that, you know, everything was up to code and stuff.
Sure.
So anyways, we were doing some like little things and ended up discovering that there was like a whole closet-sized space that we were missing because there was just like a wall up. It was just plywood. So turns out it was covered. But in that wall, we saw, it looked like it was bigger stuff. So it looked like an altar space was in there in some capacity. There were candles and wooden statues that were bigger, and then a trunk, and then there were some photos as well. So anyways, we gathered that it was probably some sort of altar. We didn't touch it. We actually had somebody come in that we know who is familiar with that to actually determine, like, if we just wanted to see what they thought about it and if they could determine what it was or who or when or anything, just because we didn't feel comfortable with it. So just with analyzing it. Anyways, and they did, and they were like, yeah, it definitely could be ceremonial stuff, but it also, I've actually never seen it. It looked West African, but that's about the extent of it. But we gathered that there were actually people living in that space back, like before the building was purchased in the 70s, and then the rise of tourism just started. And so somebody probably had to leave very quickly and just left all the big stuff and just walled it in, maybe hoping to come back, maybe didn't, don't know. But there are 0 records on that property from, like, there's like a total dead space of time. There was, it was used as warehousing in like the 1800s, early 1900s, and then nothing.
Oh, yeah.
And then it was purchased in the 70s.
That's a lot of Savannahs.
Yeah, absolutely.
And huge swaths of missing time.
Yeah, it really is.
Yeah.
And so anyway, so that was a little frustrating because we were like, oh, we just want to know like who was in here or what was happening. Because, I mean, if there was a hoodoo shop or a voodoo shop down on Factors Walk, like,
well, what's
I wonder
interesting
where.
is, so that, the hoodoo shop was closer to the Abercorn ramp.
Okay.
And I remember being a small child and visiting, like walking by there. So it was close to the Abercorn. But the interesting thing is, a lot of times when people have like any business, but they want to practice their faith, they will use small alcoves. People oftentimes imagine that altars would be ornate and huge and full of garish things, but they're actually usually very small and easily concealed. Because one of the big things, especially being in the Bible Belt, is you don't want to expose any contrary faith. So you had a lot of these little altars, things, and they were oftentimes in like closets or you know, something that you even shiffer robes, inside, small things that you can close in case somebody walked in. So I'm very fascinated by that concept.
That makes a lot of sense actually, because I didn't even put that 2 and 2 together, but of course, that makes a lot of sense.
And even so, a lot of people actually feel that if somebody sees your altar, then they could tamper with your magic, have an easier time breaking down your wards, easier time hexing you and things like that. So that's another reason why it's become so popular.
Even conceptually could be slaves.
Hey, y'all. If you love this podcast, you're going to love our other podcast called From One to Wicked. That is a podcast where Madison and I rate malevolent hauntings from around the world on a scale from 1 to wicked.
We upload episodes every Monday and Friday on about anywhere you find your podcast. So if you're looking for more spooky content, definitely go check that out. Stay spooky, y'all.
Yes.
Slave-oriented in that realm. I mean, it may not go back that far, but that tradition of hiding your altar, hiding your faith. In Savannah, there's a lot of hearsay and observation that the Gullah and Geechee peoples were allowed to practice their faith even in sight of, very prudent Christians, because the Christians saw value in it. And so Savannah was always a little integrated. The white slave owner recognized the potency of the faith that the slaves were practicing. And by association, like if you follow these stories, it even comes up to Midnight in the Garden of Good and Evil, where you have this very wealthy white man who uses a hoodoo practitioner as his main, advisor.
Yeah.
And Minerva, and that book itself actually drove a lot of the practitioners of Savannah into hiding. Because when that book came out, everyone showed up in Savannah going, I want me a voodoo priest. I want, where am I going to find, a person to weave these spells? And they did not like that. Not at all.
No.
There used to be a park bench, like tucked away right by the playground, where the Colonial Park Cemetery was, right there, like nowhere where you can see, because it was literally like tucked behind a fence.
Okay.
And it was said that that's where you would sit and wait for a practitioner to come and engage you in case you needed something done.
I see.
So it was fascinating, because all of these stories, they come and they kind of pile up on each other, but they show like an interesting tolerance for the faith in this region. And it's like, you'd think that they would have been stomped out. You'd think there would have been more friction, but there really wasn't. Up until the 90s, I think it was pretty just accepted.
Yeah.
That is them. Even in the early 90s, I was able to go to a ritual in the basement of a church. And it was like, this is amazing. This is, and it's like, this is their faith. This is, they're practicing a faith. They're not doing some kind of weird thing. It's just the same as going to a church and getting on your knees and praying to a man in the sky. It's the same notion.
And I think a lot of parallels to, even not just in Savannah, but any enslaved folks that were forced over here. It was, some places did definitely, and some people did force their religion. Like,
absolutely.
You have to practice this. And so instead of, completely abandoning their faith, it was how do we, like, I see parallels between this saint, this god, and this one over here that I practice. So it would be literally just, overtly on paper looks like worshiping this god, but really like they're keeping their faith.
Well, that's the story of Santeria.
Yes, exactly.
It's so fascinating because it's about adaptation. It's about, you have these powerful beings that you recognize. Yeah. We have these powerful beings that we recognize. Maybe they're the same. Maybe there's a crossover. Maybe there's an overlay, because
we're saying the same
ideally,
thing.
If it's all about greater powers, and I recognize a greater power, you recognize a greater power, they have something in common. So let us, meld those ideas. Yeah, absolutely.
No, it's fascinating for sure.
So onto the paranormal side of things. I would ask, what is the most frightening thing that has happened in the museum? I'm sure plenty of things have happened, but.
Well, actually, there's a few things. And so to take it back before we even opened, we were discussing everything about what the ethos and what the mission is in the museum, because it really is just to highlight these weirder sides of history that just kind of don't get talked about, because we're actually digging up some really interesting stuff, and kind of opening a dialogue. And we were like, we're not going to talk about ghosts. That's just not our thing. We'll leave that to the ghost tours. We'll leave that to the, ghost hunts and Moon River Brewing and, all those places. Sure. So that was just not our intention. And then the day that we opened, we had, people come in, and people we knew, people we didn't know. And then everybody was like, yeah, I heard my name being called when I was playing pinball, and I don't know what that was all about. And it was like, I felt somebody standing behind me, and nobody was there. I thought it was my friend, but it wasn't. And so instantly we were like, all right, so that's just how it's gonna go. It's an old building in Savannah.
Absolutely.
Weren't shocked. But anyways, so a few experiences that stand out to me for sure. I give whoever is in the front of house, kind of gives a little tour, a mini guide in the first room, and then it's self-guided and you can kind of walk around at your own pace. And that's where we talk about Madame Truth, the holes in the wall, and also differentiate like the real taxidermy, like two-headed animals, and then the gaffs, because there's just a distinction. But some people go in, they're like, everything's real, or like everything is not born that way. But anyway, so just kind of give a little rundown. So I was doing that for a group of probably 6 people, and I was talking about the altar space, actually, and that's in the very corner of the back of the room. And these people were probably standing like 4 to 6 feet away from me, and I was just talking to them and like glancing around at everybody, and I noticed a swirling ball of smoke above somebody's head, like about 6 inches off of his head, and I was like, what the hell is that? So anyways, I just kept staring above this random man's head, and I was like, I probably look really weird, and I was just on autopilot because I memorized to a degree, like, and it's, there's more or less a script, so I just went autopilot mode, and I was like, what is that, what is that, what is that? And then I looked away briefly, and then I looked back and it was gone. And again, these people were in front of me. Nobody was like lighting up a cigarette or vaping or anything. And I didn't smell anything either. So I was like, I don't know what that is. So anyways, I concluded that tour and then ran over to the next room, and the next room, just trying to like locate what it might have been. Because I was like, is there smoke in here? Like, I don't know. I just was curious and trying to figure out what it was, because I definitely saw something, and for several seconds, and nothing. And then I approached the people that I saw that over, and I was like, does that ever happen? And the girl was like, actually, I'm really sensitive, and sometimes things follow me, so I wouldn't be totally surprised. And I was like, okay, interesting. And I told her that there's a camera like right beside where they were standing. So we have an app. I was going to pull up the footage, and I was trying to, and it kept saying network error. Every time I would go to that time, like I pinpointed about the time, and it would just say network error, which isn't super uncommon. It's not like, some apps need some time to reset. So anyways, I kept going back throughout that day, and I was like, you know what, I'll just, because it still wasn't working. I got her email. I was like, when I find it, I'll email it to you. I went back for a solid week or so trying, and I could pull up other cameras at the exact same time, just not that one. I was like, oh, of course. So anyways, that was really weird, but a standout kind of thing.
I mean, that sort of thing where technology goes awry with spirits happens all the time. It's just kind of an odd thing that happens. I've had guests on tours and stuff catch photos, and then the next day their screen is like completely green or black whenever they pull up the photo, and they're like, what did you do to my phone? I'm like, I did nothing to your phone. Right? It is for some reason, sometimes spirits just either don't want to be captured, or they
unintentionally interfere.
Absolutely, or they just suck the energy out of it.
Well, there's a lot of people who believe that even like orbs are the moment that an entity is drawing power, it's drawing energy. And so if you're seeing something, it's very likely that it's drawing energy from somewhere. And most people will note that it's the ambient temperature. If it's hot out, it's drawing heat right out of the air, and so then you get cold spots. You're like, ooh, it's chilly right there. But if you have an electric device, a lot of people believe that the spirit will just pull the juice right out of the electrical device, and show itself and present itself.
Yeah, it's interesting though.
Yeah. So I can imagine though, like with so many haunted objects, because even if it's not necessarily like this one's possessed or something, there's plenty of objects that have a lot of residual energy from it. I can imagine like how draining it must be to be in a building that has all of that going on all at once. Is there like one particular object you would say would be the most haunted out of the museum?
It's hard to say, because we do, surprisingly enough, the upstairs, the cult and serial, because I don't know when you were in last. I don't know if the cult room was on the bottom floor, but we switched things around. And everything upstairs, it's all like the heaviest topics, and we get the least amount of people saying that they feel stuff up there specifically, which is interesting because we do have some heavy topics. But anyways, downstairs though, that in the pinball room, which is in the beginning of it, we do have a whole cabinet full of stuff that there's something attached to it that won't leave. they're not bothering anything or not bothering anyone right now. We've had things that happened in the past, like when this item is around, everybody hears their name being called or something, or like whispered, or
scary.
yeah. I did, because I'm interested in all this stuff, and I would say slightly skeptical. Like there's something, and I do want to know exactly what it is, or try to exhaust every possible thing. And I also know that I innately can protect myself, and if I mess with something, I'll be okay, because I know how to kind of deal with it. But anyways, we actually used a talking board that we got from an old school collector back in like 5 years ago or so. And we were just like, oh, this is really cool. It was printed in Chicago. Ryan's from Chicago. And he was like, that's really neat. And he was like, yeah, I'll sell it to you, but like, just don't use it. And we were like, okay, why? He's like, don't worry about it. Just don't use it. And we're like, okay, well, we're probably going to use it. So, like, I don't know. Like, you just have to. If somebody says not to, you're like, it's like the scary movie where you're like, why would you go in the basement? There's
Right.
something in there, but it's dark, and you want to see what's in there, and then you die. But anyways, so we ended up doing a seance, kind of just in the record store. It was kind of just like an impromptu day right before Halloween one year, and we were like, we just want to do something in the store and space, and bring in some friends and whatnot. And we were thinking, is this going to be really boring? What if nothing happens? So we were like joking, like, should we like put a fishing line on a book or so, like like Ghost Adventure style or something? But we ended up not doing that or anything. But as soon as we take out the board, start setting up and getting everything together, and it was only like 15 people that were there plus me. The power started acting all weird, so we turned off the games that were in the back, and then the whole power went out in the building, and we were like, that's really weird. We went to the breaker, it was fine, and so we're like, scheduled outage maybe, or like some issue, but like all of the power is underground, so like even weather, it like never goes out over it in the Starland district, which is where we were doing that. So anyways, that was just odd, but it definitely, and then there was some residual stuff after that there was just something wrong.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Throughout. And so anyways, did cleanse the space and everything, and everything remained fine. And I was pricing books the next day it was like just sitting right beside my head on a table, and I, no joke, heard somebody or something whisper like right in my ear, go away. And I was like, all right, time to put this away. And I have not touched it again. I haven't used it again, but
Probably a good idea.
No doubt that's probably what that guy was talking about.
Yeah,
so.
definitely, absolutely.
So now I know, and now I don't have to do it again.
Yeah.
We just did a whole episode on Ouija boards
Oh, nice, yeah.
and the concept,
Yes.
practice behind it, and because it is, all in all, it's a game
Yeah.
that was developed by a person for a very specific purpose, but it's about all the intent that came after, especially handmade or homemade,
Yes.
or these made for specific purpose talking boards are very susceptible to attachment.
Yes, they are.
Yeah.
What I just can't stop thinking of is what is the object that people hear their name called? Like,
It's actually a little doll
of
that
course
looks
it is.
Naturally.
Oh gosh.
it is actually a really scary looking doll to me personally. I don't like it. There's one that creeps me out even more that's in the store that nobody's had anything with, and I'm like, I just don't like it. I don't know. But I mean, there are, so that's one of the things that actually because people just come into the record store. We've had the record store in Starland for 11 years now plus. So that's been there for a while. And people walk in, they're like, what is this place? Oh, you like weird stuff. Okay, well, and then they come back with a box of stuff. That's all they think is weird. And so, of course, Ryan is a hoarder. And if it's interesting, weird, if there's some crazy story, or even like if he just likes the person that brings it, like he'll grab it. So that one doll he got from that kind of situation. It was somebody just that came in and where it's like, oh yeah, I have this doll that kind of freaks my kids out, and my grandmother gave it to me. Like, it's just, and they didn't have any like attachment personally to it. They're like, do you want it? I see you have a whole bunch of dolls. And so he was like, yeah, sure. And he brought in some records along with it. And so anyways, he put it just like hanging out in the store as decoration. And then as soon as that happened, there was one instance that really stood out. There were just two people in the store. It was a customer and an employee. The employee was just doing stuff at the front and behind the counter, and then somebody was at the back looking at records, and that person was like, how do you know my name? And the guy working was like, I don't know your name. What is your name? And they were like, didn't you just call my name? He's like, no, absolutely. And he got really freaked out. And I mean, we've seen actual people like for instance, there are no customers in the store, and the employee working would go up to talk to somebody thinking that somebody was there. Oh. So stuff like that. So we cycle through things, and Ryan has an office, and so I can't remember how, I think it was kind of inadvertently, we just took the thing out of the store, just making room for other stuff, and then it stopped, and we're like, Then we put it back at one point, it started again. We're like, all right, okay, so this is just gonna live over here for a while. And now it's in the museum.
Yeah, that definitely, to me at least, sounds like there's something demonically attached to it. Because Chris and I have talked about this a million times on this podcast of anytime a spirit is able to learn things, or if it knows your name, it knows something personal about you, it's never a good sign. It was never something that was alive. And we also use demon as like a catch-all term. But, it's but something malevolent of sorts. So that I can see why somebody would want to get rid of that and be like, hey, my grandmother gave this to me. It's just a creepy looking doll, but maybe they had an experience themselves, or maybe they invited something into the doll.
Yeah, honestly, who knows? And again, it's an older doll, so it's been around for a while. So again, who knows what it's picked up or what attached to it.
Well, we had talked in the past about like even just antique stores. Just going through an antique store, you're going to find these items that have been in people's homes, that have been soaking up a very specific type of energy, that have been a part of an energy pattern, and then pulled out of that energy pattern, it starts to have friction with the new energy pattern or the new place that it goes to. Just that is enough to invite any number of spirits, because there is now a type of energy that is present that is not detectable by any normal means. Right. So you have an item that was in somebody's house for 60 years, and then it's in a store with a bunch of other items, and it's just conflicting. Yeah. And that friction can be a draw, now because it doesn't necessarily mean that it came from a house of Satan worshipers, or it came from the murder house. It's possible that it's just that energy attracts something nearby. And we do use demon to suggest a non-human entity or a human entity that has breached into non-human territory, because humans generally can't read people's minds. They can't know, as a rule. There are a few that seem to have that ability, but ultimately, we go through this world with blinders on, and they were put there for a reason.
Yeah.
Yeah, dolls always tend to be like the first type of object to become haunted. And I think it's because they have that human-like.
Because they're in a human form.
Exactly.
But inanimate.
Yeah, exactly. I have a doll that is actually in this theater right now that's haunted. I've had it since my childhood. I hated this doll as a kid. It was my grandmother's, and when she passed away when I was 2 years old, I got the doll. Oh. And I hated it because it moves. It moves, it looks at you, it watches you. And for the longest time, I kept it at my parents' house. Like when I moved out, I was like, this thing's not coming with me. I do not want it anymore. And then JT, one of the first times I ever took him to my parents' house, he saw the doll. He's like, well, we have to take this with us. And I was like, you don't want this doll. It's okay. And I ended up keeping it in the trunk of my car for a while because I was just not about having it anywhere. And as soon as I had that doll in my trunk, I got into like 2 accidents with like in a month. And I'm like, are you kidding me? And now it lives here in the theater. Our set designer hates this doll also. So JT used to move it around a bit, and now it's in hiding, and it's not happy about it. So
It's in timeout.
we'll update you on how things go now that it's in timeout. But yeah, it's so strange how that goes down. But I find that the more malevolent spirits just like dolls the most out of all of
Well,
them.
it's that craving. How much does it want to be a part of this world? And how, there was a period of time when puppetry was outlawed by the church because it was thought to be like an evocation, suggesting you're bringing to life a humanoid figure and a type of witchcraft to it. And I think that dolls kind of represent that belief that a spirit will see a body and be like, I could live again. I could be alive, and will inhabit it. And then comes, the myriad of stories that are along the lines of a doll influencing bad behavior in children in what you would imagine is an attempt to occupy the child. In an attempt to, I think even the movie Child's Play is basically that story, which is a doll has a spirit in it that wants to get into the living child. So it's a step by step. It's like one step away from being alive again.
Yeah.
I could also see some of the stuff in the serial killer displays being haunted because a lot of them are very personal objects. Like I know you have Eileen Wuornos's underwear.
Yes.
And which I'm a big fan of Eileen Wuornos, not for what she did, but like I find her story just fascinating. But the artifact that I found to have the most energy attached to it is that police badge or like the patch with the blood on it still.
Yeah.
I found that one to be just exuding energy, and I think it's because it still has blood on it.
Probably.
Yeah, from the victim, because blood is such a powerful tool in magic or any kind of paranormal things.
It's standing for like you as a person.
Exactly. Well, and it binds someone to that object. And so I find it interesting that more people aren't picking up on that.
Yeah. And some people do for sure, but there's, and then some people are just like, this whole place is very overwhelming. So
Well, I was about to say, I think
yeah.
the trouble is you probably can't see the forest for the trees when you have that many things.
Oh, yeah.
You're basically just going right into a dense,
densely
supernatural, preternatural, dark place. And it's like people don't have experiences there because guess what? Even ghosts are like, oh no, thanks. I don't want to be in a room with serial killer stuff.
I don't want to be with Pogo the clown.
Right, I'm not looking at Pogo.
Yeah.
And it's such an interesting thing because people will naturally assume that the dark thing is going to be super haunted, and it's like, well, dark things exude darkness, and not every spirit is down with that. Not every spirit wants to participate with the darkness. So and it's given that it's such a variety, such a intersection of different dark entities. It's likely that they're neutralizing each other in some way. They're just creating a dark space and not necessarily an opportunistic space. If you're following that principle, that concept of would this item be haunted? It's like probably, yes, but serial killers are scary. And even after death, a spirit might not want to encounter that kind of darkness.
Yeah,
absolutely.
And I wonder too, because we do mostly explore true crime through artwork and personal effects, just because it makes it gets people taught. Our whole thing is not to be like shocking. It's not. That's literally the antithesis. It's more so to like, show. Okay, these were people. How do you get from point A as being a child born to killing people? Like it's fascinating to kind of explore those things like mental illness and social factors and all these things throughout history. So so that's another thing too. I'm like, and a lot of it is while they're incarcerated, death row art. So I don't know if there's some finality and like closure to that too. That's maybe like nothing needs to like be, or nothing is attached to these things that are done. I don't know, but that's a thought too.
No, absolutely. Like you're saying, the blood on the badge is not going to be the same as
a painting
John Wayne Gacy's painting from his cell. However, also knowing that if you're getting death row artifacts, you're getting the artifacts of people knowing their death is imminent. And in many cases, knowing the exact date and time of their death, which is a peculiar thing to think
weird,
about.
Yeah.
You know, to know that you're living your days to a specific point.
Right.
So if you wanted to think of the spiritual aspect of it or the paranormal aspect of it, you are really slowly creaking open that door. We've talked about this in the past with sacrifice. The idea behind sacrificing a life is that you're opening a door because the soul passes through the door. And in a lot of sacrificial rituals, there's a little bit of torture that comes beforehand in order to open the door slowly, so that there would be time to pull something through or see to the other side or have that communication. Well, if you're on death row, that door is probably opening very slowly. Your knowledge of your own death, the kind of torment that comes from knowing that your death is coming, no matter how nonchalant the person may be about it, it seems like you're dealing with that same thought that death is approaching. It has, you know, and thereby the passage of the spirit into the next realm beyond the veil, it's coming, you know, and so any artifact of that period might carry with it energy. But not like, you know, it's not like you have, you know, this knife was used in the, you know,
exactly
1914 murder of 10 people. And so,
No,
you know, that's a much different connotation.
For sure.
The thing is, too, about what you're saying is, like, I feel like there is something really interesting about people knowing when they're going to die, because that's not something humans were ever meant to do. They are never meant to know the future in that way. That's why, you know, that's why when spirits tell you the future, we recommend, like, you kind of be weary of that, because it's dangerous. Humans are not supposed to know these things, and especially you're not supposed to know exactly the way you're going to die either. So, you know, in places where you get to choose your type of execution, that's very I've never thought about that before. You know,
it's just something that's very intriguing. You know, it's a thought experiment, really. Of whether or not those intentions have impact on our world, because we're supposed to be blissfully ignorant, because foreknowledge removes free will. Free will being the chief among the human gifts. You know, when you start to look for that preordained or you know, some precognitive sense, you are removing the element of our lives that make it human. You know, you are now delving into an inhuman knowledge. Well, so yeah, it's an interesting conversation.
Well, and even when you're doing like things like tarot or divination, it's always, this could be what's going to happen, but there's always the choice to change that. It's never set in stone. So if something tells you it's set in stone, you're dealing with some other types of energy. Right. So maybe that's something we should dive into sometime.
I mean, there's a lot of interesting stories about where future knowledge comes from, and because many faiths have different ideas about how the future is written, you know, or if it's written.
Yeah, absolutely. So some more kind of paranormal experiences. Tell us about the Ronald McDonald doll.
The Ronald McDonald doll, actually, that lived in the store for a really long time too. And that just kind of made its way to the museum. And we put a sign on it saying, "Do not touch me. I don't like to be touched." Mostly because people kept knocking his stupid head off and taking pictures with it. So we actually put like fishing line on it. Yeah. Anyways, but I don't know if it has anything attached to it. It just kind of like sits. It scares the hell out of people, though.
Well, because it's super creepy.
It's very creepy. It's an old, like, 1960s, like, Ronald McDonald, like, fiberglass head, and then, like, a tiny little bodysuit. And it's creepy. Yeah, it sits on our stairs and greets people after they're done with pinball. So they're just like, oh, la, 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 oh, my gosh. And so, yeah, it's more so just like actually freaky, but it's a good primer for right before going upstairs.
Absolutely.
I have a very solid clown phobia.
Oh no.
So yeah, I do not like any clown-centric things. I'm easily agitated by clowns.
Yeah.
Then you probably would not like the True Crime Room. It is a lot of John Wayne Gacy's painting of clowns.
I did not like it. I have been, and I did not like it.
No.
It was not for me.
No. It's interesting because there's such a Because Pennywise was based on that
absolutely.
whole case,
Sure.
and then clowns were solidified as ruined.
He single-handedly ruined clowns.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Because people actually like them. Because everyone walks in the museum and they're like, "Ooh, it's so creepy that he drew clowns." I'm like, "Well, it wasn't when he was, clowning and doing." And that was like technically a very small part of his life. That was like the charity side, and that is actually how he blended in with society.
Right.
Absolutely.
And then he had a totally double life on top of that. But
that was
like,
even later too.
Yeah.
I mean, it wasn't even like it came about right around, just preceding the killings. It was not.
Right,
it was not his vocation.
Oh,
he was
no.
a construction worker.
Yeah, he owned his
And
own business. Had to
he was like the manager of KFC, and So yeah, it's interesting to think that
That
before
small
John
part.
Wayne Gacy, and not to say that people weren't afraid of clowns before that.
Sure.
It's just the rampant and
The
widespread-
collective.
the industry, the clowning industry took a huge hit, and to this day, still, I even like. I want to say like 5 or 6 years ago, there were all those clown sightings,
Yeah, I remember.
all around the country, and it was
That
just
was
like,
weird.
how odd. Those people are capitalizing on people's fear, but it's also destroying
Yeah.
like professional clowning.
Right. And even actually bringing it into a different part of the whole museum, the sideshow history and like circus history aspect of the museum gets into, the actual personal stories behind a lot of those people who kind of were lost to time, or you know the name or face of, but don't know the story behind.
Sure.
But no, a lot of clowns that actually performed in circuses were ex-cons and people also that were like evading recapture if they escaped
Painting
from
your face.
something. Right. I mean, it's a permanent disguise, and that's where, a lot of people that were just able to kind of go under the radar that way. So there's an innately kind of that aspect, and not all clowns obviously are ex-cons.
Sure.
It's just it was something that was just easy because you would be in constant makeup.
Absolutely.
And it was an easy job,
Well,
and you
and
travel around.
even one of the most common clown characters, I think Emmett Kelly kind of made it such a predominant one, is the hobo, the
The sad
spindle
clown.
on the sad clown who is just an outcast of society. His clothes are all ripped and rumpled, and and a very widely beloved. But when you think about it, it's I can't fit in. I am isolated because the bright and garish Bozo the Clown kind of entertainer was in stark contrast to the sad clown.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
I think what makes John Wayne Gacy the creepiest as a clown is knowing what he did to children, like young men. Thinking of this man dressed up as something that is so entertaining and so loved by kids, being around kids, but knowing what he did is what makes him the creepiest.
Well,
and
he would actually claim that he was showing them a magic trick and put handcuffs on them. They would willingly put handcuffs on themselves because he was saying, I'm going to show you how to get out of these handcuffs.
which is just...
And it's just like, oh.
Yeah.
Because he even called them tricks, didn't he? What he did, he announced as
There
tricks.
was a rope trick.
The rope trick and the handcuff trick.
Yeah.
I'm going to show you the handcuff trick. I'm going to show you the rope trick. And the rope trick, of course, was strangulation, was, the end.
Yeah, it was a tourniquet
the last
that
trick.
Yeah.
But, yeah. On to another topic. Chloe actually does taxidermy also. So I think it would be an interesting concept to ask so you're dealing with the animals, obviously, after they've passed. Do you think after you have reformed them that they could welcome an entity of some sort? I've never thought about taxidermy in that way, but you seem to be the person that...
Yeah, that's interesting. I've actually never thought of it. I don't think it's out of the question for sure, though. It is interesting, though, because there is definitely... Because I love animals. Like, I don't think people that taxidermy could do that and hate animals,
Absolutely.
It's definitely, it comes from a love of these creatures and wanting to keep them alive in some capacity. But I do some pet preservation. So I taxidermy somebody's rabbit and somebody's rat and, stuff like that. Somebody wanted their cat that had like 9 toes or something. They wanted to preserve its paw. And I was like, cats are my thing. I don't know if I can do it, but I took on the project anyways. I was like, okay, I'm going to do it. And there is definitely like a life to when they're alive. And it is, it's weird to actually, there's such they become almost inanimate, like little corpses. And there is, it really demonstrates how much of a like spirit and life that these things have when they are alive. And it's just something that actually took me by surprise, because I thought I'd be like weeping this entire time during this project, and I was like, actually, this is weird. But anyways, I do think that that's definitely a possibility. I think for them to have some,
and there's a lot of complex structures to animal spirits versus human spirits, and animals generally don't have ambition.
Right.
They're generally not conniving or scheming.
No.
They're generally not trying to attempt anything other than existence.
Yeah.
And it makes a lot of sense that when they pass, they simply go.
Yeah. There's nothing unresolved.
Right. There's no unresolved issues. There's nothing like that. But in a few instances, when I've heard of like pet returns and things like that, it does seem to be a case of attachment.
Yeah.
And it's always lovely. I've never heard of a like scary, like
pet
my dog
cemetery.
came back and then tried to eat my face. It's always warning them of a house fire or something like that.
Yeah.
And it's fascinating because I honestly don't know that I've ever heard an instance where like a humanist spirit or entity looked at an animal and was like, I'm gonna go in there.
Yeah.
And it's possible because they just recognize it as, well, there's no advantage. There's no advantage to entering in that.
And that's like the doll versus
pet
thing. It's
like the doll is a human
and
that interacts with humans.
Yes, exactly.
That is being adored upon and spoken to and treated like alive by children versus a preserved animal.
Yes.
Which stands as a look how beautiful this animal was, but it's not nearly as interactive.
Yes,
it's not,
for sure.
Ideally,
no.
It's not.
It's more so just like, this exists and here it is, as it was.
Well, because it's like, I wonder. I've always wondered that a little bit, because you do see some animal ghosts. Like in
absolutely.
Savannah, we have plenty of dog ghosts. There's one in the Andrew Lowe house that I've identified because I tripped over at one time, which is a whole funny story. Because basically, up on the upper floors, that family used to keep a lot of corgis out of all the dog breeds. So they're nice and stout and low to the ground. But one time, I was walking up the stairs and I kind of stumbled over something. And at first I thought it was the carpet hadn't been like taped down well enough, but it wasn't that, because I looked at it and it was like in the ground, like it was super solid. And then another one of my coworkers were like, I tripped over something up there too, but I didn't see anything. And I read and learned about the corgis, and I was like, a corgi would make sense at the height that where I hit. So I'm like, ghost corgi.
That sounds very ghost corgi.
Well, and in that instance, you're talking about more of a residual haunt, I
Absolutely,
think.
yeah.
Because then you're talking about an energy pattern. And if there was a dog or a series of dogs that really embodied the area, it's likely that the environment held that spirit signature in place. And you can interact with it and find yourself, a lot of people will mistake residual haunting for intelligent haunting because of a pattern of behavior, but that pattern of behavior was actually just secured, and it's not interacting, it's just doing what it does.
Absolutely. It's the same thing at the Pink House, too. There's a dog spirit there that's known to go under the tables and lick people's legs, and they'll be like, right?
I would be freaked the hell
Well,
out.
yeah, because guests would complain. They're like, there's something, like, it feels like something's licking my leg. And
that doesn't go well, because they also say that Colonel Habersham likes the ladies a
no.
little. So.
Is he crawling around in the floor in the afterlife? Like,
A lot of the stories say that he's in the women's bathroom.
I've heard that, yes.
Is there a picture of him in the women's bathroom?
Yes.
Well, just take that out maybe, and that might help.
But he would be really mad.
In there. That's fine.
So beware of the bathrooms and the Pink House. And also, if you feel something licking your leg, maybe it's the Colonel.
Could be the Colonel. Oh, Lord.
That's a more horrifying thought.
It's a much more horrifying story.
That started out as like cute dog ghost.
And then it's like, no.
Well, maybe they created the dog ghost just because they're like, I don't want people to think that that's what we're dealing with while they're eating their super fine dining meal,
It's a great restaurant.
It is.
Go for the restaurant, stay for the licking.
I've also heard of a spirit in the Pink House, too, that I believe she was like super pro-prohibition. And she hates alcohol.
Uh-oh.
Have you heard of that spirit?
So, it's weird because I've heard that story over at the Telfair place too. Mary Telfair was very pro.
Oh, she was just super angry in general.
And if you ever serve alcohol in the museum, she acts up.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Yeah,
it's weird because Savannah does have a lot of those like caveat stories that like fall in a lot of locations.
Yeah.
So yeah, I have heard of the Prohibition era, woman who was very stern about alcohol, but it's kind of neither here nor there, really.
Yeah. Well, I just always like that story because of the fact that there's like 3 bars in the Pink House, and I'm like, if there was a ghost who's like super prohibition, like heavy, I'm like, I could see that being super active. So I'll just keep it in my mind that she's there.
Yeah, exactly.
It gives me a laugh.
You can actually dine in the wine cellar. There's a little romantic table, and you can go and dine in the wine cellar. I'm sure she loves that.
Absolutely. I hope you enjoyed part 1 of this 2-part episode with Chloe Graveface. Part 2 will become available this Saturday at 12 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. Stay spooky, y'all.